The desert wind never stopped on Proxima B7. It howled across endless dunes of rust-colored sand, seeping into every crack of stone and steel. Jack Harmon stood at the edge of his observation deck, staring at the barren horizon as the twin suns clawed their way into the sky, casting everything in a harsh orange glare. The reinforced walls of his compound groaned under the constant assault, but they held. They always held. Jack had built them that way thick enough to outlast storms, syndicate raids, and even his own regrets. He was 52, though the years weighed heavier than his muscles betrayed. His body remained hard, carved from years of labor, of lifting, fixing, patrolling, a soldier's body, honed by necessity. His face, though, told the truth. Weathered skin, lines etched deep from sun, wind, and memory. The look of a man who had seen too much blood spilled, too much loyalty betrayed, and who had chosen solitude as his penance. Every day was the same, and that sameness was his survival. Wake before dawn, systems check, perimeter scan, coffee brewed. Bitter and strong from dwindling beans he rationed like gold. Breakfast of synthetic protein, and whatever his hydroponic garden grudgingly yielded. Repairs to solar arrays, water reclamation units, the shield generator he'd reinforced more times than he cared to count. Routine was order. Order kept chaos at bay. 15 years of it. 15 years since he had turned his back on Earth, on the military, on the endless parade of missions that blurred into war crimes he could neither stop nor forget. He had walked away from all of it, fled to a world no one wanted, where the storms howled loud enough to drown out memory. And yet, memory still came for him. Not in daylight, but in dreams, not always the same dream. A woman's face, alien yet beautiful, her skin faintly violet, her hair white as starlight, her eyes piercing blue. She would stand at the edge of his vision, lips moving with words he could never quite hear, reaching out as if through smoke. He'd wake with his chest tight, his palms sweating, wondering if isolation had finally broken his mind. Dreams weren't supposed to feel like memories. That morning began no differently. He stood on the deck, jacket pulled tight against the wind, muttering to himself about another day in paradise. He drank his coffee, checked the screens, prepared for another cycle of monotony. Until the alarm sounded, the sound split the air like a knife, shrill, insistent. Jack froze mid-sip, the mug trembling in his hand. In 15 years, that alarm had never gone off. Not once. He set the cup down slowly, his pulse quickening as muscle memory kicked in. Computer, display perimeter feed. His voice was rough. Underused, but steady. The wall screen flickered. Static, then figures. 11 of them, clustered at the main gate, pressed against the storm's fury. Humanoid, yes, but not human. Long white hair whipped like banners in the gale. Their uniforms were torn, insignia unrecognizable, yet their posture spoke of soldiers forced into desperation. Their skin glowed faintly violet beneath the dust, etched with luminous patterns that shifted like living tattoos. Jack's breath caught when the one at the front raised her hand, pressing it against the gate. Her face came into focus, eyes locking. With the camera, blue eyes, the same eyes from his dreams. Lyanna. It hit him like a blow. For months, that face had haunted his sleep, and now it stared at him from the real world, framed by sand and storm. She moved her lips, speaking words he couldn't hear through the feed, but somehow he knew they were meant for him. Jack reached for the pulse rifle mounted by the door, fingers wrapping around the grip with the familiarity of old reflex. He checked the charge. Ready, his instincts screamed trap. 11 strangers appearing unarmed, uniforms torn, at his gate in the middle of a storm? It reeked of setup. And yet, the other voice, the one he hadn't listened to in years, The human one whispered something else. He moved through the compound, boots crunching on the reinforced flooring, until he stood at the gate's viewport. The storm whipped dust against the transparent aluminum, but the figures were clear now. Exhausted, hollow-eyed, soldiers who had lost too much. And at their center, Liana, her gaze steady, unwavering. The external speakers crackled as he keyed. Who are you?" His voice carried across the storm. "How did you find me?" She pressed both hands to the gate, her expression fierce despite her exhaustion. Her words came through thick with accent, but clear. "Please, human man. We have nowhere else to go. Our males were taken by war. We are widows. The syndicate will kill us. You are the only one who can help." Jack's jaw clenched. His training screamed no. His heart said nothing at all, just beat harder against his ribs. And then Liana's final words cut through every wall he had built. "I saw you in the dreaming, many times. You would shelter us when no one else would." The rifle in his hand suddenly felt heavy, useless. He stared at her through the storm, at the woman he had dreamed of, before he even knew she existed. And against every instinct that had kept him alive, Jack Harmon pressed the release. The gate groaned as it slid open, dust sweeping inside. "Get in," he barked, voice harsh to cover the trembling underneath. "Quickly, before the storm takes you." One by one, the women stepped through. And as the last passed the threshold, Jack sealed the gate behind them with a final, irrevocable hiss of metal. He told himself it was temporary, that he was simply keeping the storm out. But deep down, he knew the truth. His solitude had just been broken forever. The storm battered the outer walls with a relentless fury. But inside the compound, the sudden silence was deafening. Jack stood in the entry chamber, pulse rifle still slung across his chest, watching the newcomers shake sand and exhaustion from their frames. 11 pairs of eyes turned toward him, glowing faintly blue in the artificial light. Their presence filled the space in a way that made him feel like a trespasser in his own home. The woman from his dreams. Liana stepped forward, her uniform jacket torn at the sleeve, revealing violet skin patterned with shifting lines like living calligraphy. Her face was sharper, now than in the visions that haunted his sleep, harder, touched by fatigue and war. Yet the familiarity of her features made Jack's chest tighten. She was real. She was here. "We are grateful," she said, her voice melodic, even through the roughness of exhaustion. "You did not have to open your doors, but you did." Jack's throat felt dry. He tightened his grip on the rifle, though he didn't raise it. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't earned my trust." He gestured sharply toward the corridor. "There's water down that hall, some food rations, auxiliary storage rooms, for sleeping quarters. Stay in that section until I decide what to do with you." One of the younger women, hair matted with sand, bristled at his tone. "We are not prisoners," she snapped, her accent thicker than Liana's. Jack's gaze cut to her. "Cold as the desert night. You're alive. That's more than most out here. Don't push it." Liana touched the younger woman's arm, a subtle gesture of restraint. Then she looked back at Jack, unflinching. "We understand suspicion, but we are not your enemies. We were soldiers once. Now we are only widows, survivors." Widows. The word hit Jack harder than he expected. He glanced over them, noting the way their uniforms still bore faded insignia of some alien military, patches torn and scorched. They carried no weapons, only the ragged remnants of discipline. He knew the look in their eyes. He had seen it in mirrors long ago. People who had lost everything and kept walking anyway. Jack turned away before the recognition could soften. Him. He keyed the security panel, setting tighter locks on the interior doors. 15 years alone had carved paranoia deep into his bones. Trust didn't come with a kind word and a sad story, But as he moved through the compound, their presence followed him like a pressure he couldn't shake. The sound of footsteps where there had been silence. A murmur of voices where once there was only the hum of machines. It unsettled him more than the storm ever could. Later, in the kitchen, he found Liana again. She stood at the viewport, watching Dawn's twin sons bleed across the desert. She had removed her jacket, leaving only a thin gray undershirt that clung to her frame. The shifting patterns on her skin pulsed faintly, as if mirroring her heartbeat. "You're awake early," Jack muttered, moving to the counter. "We require less rest than humans," she said without looking at him. 4 hours is enough." Jack set the coffee pot to brew. The smell of bitter grounds filled the room, a comfort he had never surrendered. He caught Liana watching him now, her head tilted slightly. "In my dreams," she said softly, "you were always drinking this." Jack froze, hand hovering over the mug. He turned to her slowly. "These dreams, how long have you been having them?" "Since the alignment of the 3 moons, 6 cycles passed." She touched her temple. At first only fragments. A man alone in a fortress of metal. A desert without end. Then clearer. Your face. Your name. Jack poured 2 cups, sliding one toward her. Their fingers brushed, and a current passed through him, sharp enough to make him draw back. Her skin was warm, alive, but something deeper had sparked. She lifted the cup, grimaced at the bitter taste, and took another sip as if determined to understand it. "The dreaming led us here, to you." Jack leaned against the counter, rifle within arm's reach. "This place isn't on any maps. No one should know it exists." Liana's blue eyes fixed on him, unwavering. "I did not find you with maps. I found you because I was meant to." The words rattled him more than the alarm ever had. For years, he had convinced himself that isolation was safety, that solitude was survival. Now, in the span of hours, his compound had filled with strangers. One of them claiming destiny had tied them together before they had ever met. Jack wanted to push her away, to reclaim the silence he had built his life on. But as her gaze held his, steady and unafraid, he felt the foundation of his solitude crack. Something had changed the moment he opened that gate, and no amount of paranoia could undo it. And deep down, though he would never admit it aloud, Jack Harmon knew that for the first time in 15 years, he was no longer alone. The silence that had once defined Jack's compound was gone. It had been replaced by voices soft at first, hesitant, then rising with laughter and the quiet rhythm of labor. In the days after their arrival, the 11 widows spread through his outpost like roots probing new soil. They moved with purpose. Unasked, their hands finding tools, their eyes measuring the spaces that had been untouched for years. Jack told himself it was temporary. A storm shelter, nothing more. Yet when he walked through the corridors, the air felt different. The sterile order he had clung to was slowly unraveling beneath their presence. The common room no longer echoed with emptiness. Fabrics salvaged from their wrecked transport hung against the cold steel walls, muting the harshness of the place. In the hydroponic garden, he found 2 of them bent over the planters, adding seeds he didn't recognize, violet fingers working delicately through the soil. One of them looked up at him, her markings glowing faintly. "These will grow quickly here," she said in her accented standard. "Your system is good, but limited. Our crops will thrive alongside yours." Jack only grunted in reply, but he didn't stop her. Mora, one of the younger women, took over his workshop, as if she had always belonged there. Jack watched her once as she hunched over a dead circuit board, her slim hands moving with surgical precision. Sparks danced across the metal as she bridged connections with ease. "You're good at that," Jack muttered. Mora looked up with a quick smile. "I was an engineer before the war. Your machines are primitive, but they endure. She returned to her work without waiting for permission. Jack didn't argue. In the kitchen, he stumbled upon Lyanna and 3 others huddled around his battered datapad, their luminous markings glowing with the flicker of the screen. The sound of laughter light, musical, echoed through the metal walls, so alien it made Jack pause in the doorway. "What's so funny?" he asked, suspicion lacing his tone. Lyanna glanced up, her blue eyes alight with amusement. "Your human entertainments. These sitcoms. The misunderstandings are absurd." Jack leaned over her shoulder, recognizing the frozen image. On the screen, an ancient episode of Friends, one he hadn't watched in decades. He almost laughed, almost told them how outdated it was, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead he muttered, "You find this interesting?" "The human obsession with mating rituals is fascinating," said Talia, her accent thicker than Lyanna's. "Is it always so complicated?" Jack smirked faintly. "Usually more so." Lyanna's gaze lingered on him longer than the others. "And yet," she said softly, "you've chosen none." The remark dug deeper than he expected. He covered the moment with a scoff, muttering something about solitude being simpler, and retreated to his coffee. But he felt her eyes follow him, her presence as constant as the wind. That night, unable to sleep, Jack wandered into the common area. He found Lyanna waiting, as if she had known he would come. Her white hair glowed in the dim light, her patterns shifting like ripples on water. "You're restless," she said. He didn't deny it. "I've been alone for 15 years. Now my compound's full of strangers." Her expression softened. "Not strangers, allies, perhaps more." The air between them thickened, charged. Jack's heart thudded against his ribs. "You keep talking about the dreaming," he said. "About seeing me before we met. You expect me to believe that?" Lyanna stepped closer, close enough that the faint warmth of her body brushed his. She lifted a hand slowly, her eyes never leaving his, and touched his cheek. The contact was electric, literally. A pulse of heat spread from her skin into his, racing through his nerves. Images flared in his mind unbidden. Spires of crystal cities, forests glowing with silver leaves, children laughing under 3 moons. None of them his memories, yet he felt them as if they were. Lyanna's voice came as a whisper, though her lips didn't move. "This is what I mean. Our people can share through touch. Memories, thoughts, emotions. The dreaming chose you, Jack. Harmon. It bound us before we ever met." Jack stumbled back, breath ragged, his chest burning with the weight of what he had seen. "What the hell was that?" "Truth," Lyanna said softly. "A piece of me, given to you. We are already connected. You feel it, don't you?" He wanted to deny it, to laugh it off as alien tricks or the product of his isolation. But the memory of her childhood festival still danced in his mind, as vivid as his own past. And worse, it felt right. Familiar. Lyanna stepped closer again, her hand finding his once more, her voice steady. "We are not here by chance, Jack. You are not meant to be alone." "Not anymore." Jack's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed. To push her away, to retreat back into the fortress of solitude he had built. Yet as her blue eyes locked onto his, steady and unyielding, something inside him broke. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel. When he bent toward her, their lips met in a kiss that seared away every wall he had built. The compound no longer resembled the hollow fortress Jack Harmon had built for one man's survival. In just weeks, it had transformed into something alive. The sterile corridors carried the scent of unfamiliar herbs drying in bowls. The common room pulsed with laughter and soft songs in a language Jack didn't know, and the hydroponic gardens had been coaxed into blooming with alien plants that glowed faintly under the lamps. Every corner bore evidence of lives settling in, roots reaching through steel and stone. Jack moved among them like a shadow watchful, wary, but increasingly unable to deny the changes in himself. He caught himself lingering when Liana passed, noting the way her luminous markings shifted with her moods. He found comfort in Mora's efficient presence in the workshop, in Talia's easy laugh as she worked the gardens, in the simple sounds of voices filling the silence that had once pressed down on him like a weight. He told himself it was temporary, that he was merely tolerating their presence until the syndicate threat passed. But even he no longer believed the lie. It was Liana who spoke first of the joining. She found him one evening on the observation deck, the twin suns sinking beneath the dunes in a blaze of orange and violet. "You have given us shelter," she said, her voice low, carried easily on the dry wind. "But in our culture, to live together is more than to share walls. It is to share spirit." Jack turned to her, frowning. "You mean that dream-sharing trick? What you did to me in the common room?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. That was only a glimpse. "The joining is deeper. It binds not only two, but all within a circle. Thoughts, emotions, memories, they are shared, woven together until none are strangers. It is how we survived, even in war." Jack stiffened. The idea clawed at his instinct for privacy, for walls. "You're talking about dropping every barrier I have left. That's not something I can do." Liana stepped closer, close enough that her markings glowed softly against his arm. "You already have," she whispered. "Each time we touch, each time we dream." Her blue eyes held his, steady, patient. "You opened your gate when every instinct told you not to. You let. You sin. Now let us complete it." He should have walked away, should have shut himself back behind routines and fences. Instead, Jack found himself nodding. "What do I have to do?" The following night, the courtyard was transformed. The women had hung bright fabrics salvaged from their wrecked transport. Along the walls, forming a circle that glowed with shifting color in the lamplight, small bowls of water sat at intervals, each cradling a flickering emergency beacon that cast ripples of light across the sand. The air was fragrant with burning herbs, sharp and sweet, alien and strangely comforting. Jack entered hesitantly, dressed in the same black shirt and worn trousers he had always worn, suddenly aware of how stark he looked against the riot of color. The women had adorned themselves with flowers from the gardens, their skin painted in swirling patterns that accentuated their natural markings. Liana stood at the center, her white hair braided and crowned with a garland of pale blossoms. Cora, the eldest, stepped forward. Her voice carried the weight of age and command as she addressed him. "Jack Harmon of Earth, you opened your gates when no other would. Tonight we open ours and welcome you into our circle. What was once separate shall now be joined." Jack swallowed hard, his hands clenching at his sides. His instincts screamed caution, but Liana's gaze anchored him, steady and unyielding. "Join." "Hands," Cora instructed. Jack stepped forward, his calloused hand finding Liana's, their fingers intertwined, warm, certain. The other women formed a ring around them, linking hands until the circle was complete. "Close your eyes," Cora sighed, "and open your minds." At first, Jack felt foolish, but then the warmth spread first from Liana's hand, then from all around him. A current ran through his body, not physical, but deeper, threading into his thoughts. He gasped as sudden images crashed through. Him, a forest of silver-leaf trees glowing in starlight, towers of iridescent stone rising above rivers of fire, children running across meadows of silver grass, the crushing grief of bound cities, of husbands lost to war. He staggered, overwhelmed, but Liana's presence steadied him. Through her, he felt the others not invasive, but there, distinct pulses of emotion, like stars in a constellation. Grief, hope, fear, determination, and beneath it all, gratitude, His own memories rose unbidden, spilling into the circle. The thunder of Earth's warships, the laughter of his unit before it was cut short, the bitter taste of betrayal in courtrooms where justice had been strangled, the endless loneliness of this barren world. He braced for judgment, for rejection. Instead, he felt only acceptance, warmth, a recognition that his pain was theirs now, as theirs was his. Tears stung his eyes. He had not wept in years. He opened them to find every woman's markings glowing brighter, their faces wet with tears that mirrored his own. Liana leaned close, her forehead touching his, her voice echoing not just in his ears, but in his mind. You are not alone anymore. You never will be. The connection deepened until Jack couldn't tell where he ended, and they began. For the first time in 15 years, the silence inside him was broken, not by noise, but by belonging. When the circle released and the connection faded, Jack swayed on his feet, breathless. Cora's hands came to rest on his shoulders. The circle is complete, she said solemnly. You are one of us. The courtyard erupted into song, a haunting melody that rose into the desert night. Jack stood in the center, Liana's hand, still in his, and understood with bone-deep certainty. His exile was over. The warning came not with sound, but with the change in the air. Jack was in the workshop with Mora, watching her fingers work deftly across a circuit board, when the intercom crackled alive, its shrill tones slicing through the hum of tools. Movement at the western ridge. Nyla's voice snapped through. The system, calm, efficient, but edged with tension. Multiple signatures, not alliance, not human. Jack's body reacted before his mind caught up. He dropped the tool, hand reaching instinctively for the pulse rifle resting against the wall. His boots hammered down the corridor, Mora right behind him. By the time he reached the monitoring station, half the women were already there, violet skin glowing faintly in the dim light of screens. The display showed it all. 6 scout vehicles, syndicate make, skimming low across the dunes, dust plumes trailing behind them. They were sleek and angular, bristling with sensor arrays. Predators circling prey. Scouts, Jack muttered, jaw tightening. They'll probe, scan, and call in reinforcements once they're sure of what's here. Liana entered, her presence grounding him even before she spoke. They must have detected the transmission. Her voice was steady, but her markings pulsed faster, betraying unease. Or they were already searching, Mora said grimly, her hands flying over the console. The comms burst drew their attention, like blood in the water. I can mask our power output, but it's too late. They have our position locked. Jack exhaled slowly, then straightened. 15 years he had lived on the edge of paranoia, preparing defenses he never thought he'd use. Now, at last, they would be tested. Defensive positions, he ordered, the soldier's voice returning as if it had never left him. Nyla. Talia, secure the communication array. That's our lifeline. Cora, take 3 and prep the emergency bunker. Mora, stay on sensors with me. His gaze flicked to Liana. You're with me. If they breach, we fight. The women moved with. Practiced efficiency, the discipline of soldiers returning to their bones. Jack felt a surge of pride he hadn't expected. This wasn't chaos. It was cohesion. In weeks, they had become a unit. His unit. On the screen, the scouts fanned into a half circle around the compound. Their scanners swept in blue arcs across. The sand, probing the shields, calculating. Jack's hand rested on the control for the automated turrets he had buried in the dunes years ago. They're looking for a weakness, Mora said. They won't find one. Jack growled. Not unless we give it to them. A sharp tone split the air. Incoming communication request. Mora glanced at him. Jack gave a nod. She patched it through. Attention, human outpost. A harsh voice barked over the speakers, guttural and Cold. This is Commander Vex of the Syndicate. Our sensors detect unauthorized Alliance signatures within your perimeter. You will surrender them immediately, or face elimination. Jack leaned into the mic, his voice iron. This compound is registered as a neutral human settlement under interstellar law. Any aggression will be reported to Earth authorities. The reply was a laugh, low and humorless. Earth authorities are 3 months' travel away. You have 10 minutes to comply. After that, we breach and burn. The channel cut. Jack turned to the women. Every face was set, markings glowing brighter with adrenaline. They're bluffing, he said. 6 scouts don't have the firepower to crack our shields. They're waiting for reinforcements. Liana's gaze locked with his. And if reinforcements come? Then we hold until ours arrive. Jack's hand moved to the console. Send to Reed. Tell him Syndicate scouts are here, requesting immediate support. Liana hesitated. What if he is not who he claims? Jack met her eyes, steady. And we're no worse off than facing this alone. But I trust him. For now. The next hour blurred into motion. Jack activated the outer defenses. His long-laid paranoia unfurling into reality automated turrets, rising from disguised housings, barricades sealing off weak points, the shield generator roaring to life in a shimmer of blue. The women took their places without question, some armed with scavenged weapons, others manning consoles. Jack moved among them, pulse rifle slung over his shoulder, barking instructions, offering reassurances. Through his bond with Liana, he felt her presence like a steady flame at his back, wordless confidence, fierce protectiveness, a reflection of his own. When the Syndicate scouts finally made their move, it was precise and measured. Beams of light cracked against the shield, scattering in bright flashes. Turrets answered with disciplined bursts, forcing the vehicles to scatter back. Dust and energy fire lit the night in strobing bursts. Then the comms pinged again. Not Syndicate this time. Neela's voice rose from the console. Jack, you need to see this. He rushed to the comms room, Liana close on his heels. The holodisplay flared to life, showing not Syndicate reinforcements, but a fleet moving in fast from the East human transports, their silhouettes unmistakable. And among them, darting like predatory birds, Alliance fighters. Impossible. Cora whispered behind him. Alliance air support was destroyed months ago. A new voice crackled through the speakers, sharp but steady. This is Commander Reed of New Hope, accompanied by General Terrace of the Alliance 7th Fleet. Hold your position, Harmon. Reinforcements are inbound. The Syndicate won't take you tonight. Jack stared at the display, disbelieving. Then he felt Liana's hand slip into his, her patterns glowing like firelight. The dreaming brought us here, she said softly. And now it brings them too. For the first time in 15 years, Jack Harmon felt not just the weight of survival, but the stirring of something else hope. 1 year later, Jack stood again on the same observation deck where he had once. Muttered bitterly about paradise. The desert stretched out as it always had, harsh and endless. But Harmony Ranch no longer seemed a lonely island of steel in a sea of sand. From this height, he could see the new buildings rising like stubborn growths against the barren world structures of steel and native stone. Housing people where once there had been only silence. The courtyard below buzzed with life. Children, human and Proxian both, darted between rows of planters now lush with green. Voices carried up laughter, songs in 2 languages braided together. Smoke from cook fires curled into the sky, carrying the scent of unfamiliar spices. What had been his solitary fortress was now a settlement of more than 200 souls. Humans from New Hope and Proxian refugees working side by side. Liana's arms slid around his waist from behind, her presence so natural now that he almost forgot there had been a time without it. Her patterns glowed softly against his back as she pressed close. "You're admiring it again," she teased, her voice carrying warmth he had come to crave. Jack smiled, covering her hands with his own. "Hard not to. I still remember when all this was just bare metal and silence." She stepped beside him, her white hair braided and decorated with a few blossoms from the gardens. It was never only silence. It was waiting. He glanced at her sidelong. "Waiting for what?" "For us," she said simply, and her blue eyes shimmered with certainty. A sound of drills rang out from the eastern ridge, where human engineers worked with Proxian artisans to raise a new hall. Jack had grown used to the sight of shared labor humans, teaching Proxians how to weld steel beams, Proxians instructing humans in the shaping of living crystal. Once, such mingling would have seemed impossible. Now it was survival. General Terrace's forces had dug in over the past year, turning Harmony Ranch into more than a settlement. It had become the beating heart of the resistance. With Commander Reed's diplomacy and the Alliance's stubborn persistence, the Syndicate had been forced back. The first battle at the gates had been only a spark. What followed was a campaign of strikes and feints, guided not by chance, but by the strange new network that had spread from Jack and Liana's bond. Dreams. It had started between them. Visions that blurred Earth's oceans and Proxima's forests. Whispers of danger and safety carried across sleep. Then others began to report it. Humans and Proxians who had grown close found themselves sharing the same visions, the same foreknowledge. The Dream Network, the scientists called it. A natural phenomenon, amplified by Proxima B7's strange magnetic field. To the soldiers, it was a miracle. Jack had led raids guided by dream-born intelligence and watched them succeed again and again. Syndicate convoys ambushed, hidden fortifications revealed, traps avoided. The enemy couldn't counter what they couldn't understand. Commander Reed says the next wave of transports arrives tomorrow, Liana said, leaning on the rail beside him. More engineers. Doctors, farmers, soldiers too. Jack nodded, though unease prickled at him. Earth's still officially neutral, but they keep sending more people, more resources. Neutrality is a word, Liana said. Action is truth. Your people have chosen their side, even if your leaders pretend otherwise. Her words carried no bitterness, only observation. He envied that calm. Down below, Talia directed a group of young humans and Proxians through the rows of crops, teaching them how to tend the hybrid plants she had coaxed from the desert soil. Mora oversaw a team repairing Cum's relays, her laughter rising above the clatter of tools. Cora, her hair streaked silver, moved through the plaza with the authority of a physician, tending wounds, offering counsel. Each widow had carved her place, becoming more than survivor builder, teacher, healer, leader. And Jack? He had become something he never thought he would be again. A commander, not of soldiers only, but of a community. Liana's hand slipped into his. She turned it palm up, guiding it to rest against her abdomen. Her markings glowed brighter, swirling with emotion. Jack's heart stumbled. He looked at her, searching her face. It seems, she said with a small, radiant smile, our bond is stronger than anyone imagined. Cora confirmed it this morning. We are expecting. The words struck like a hammer and a ball all at once. For a moment, he could only stare, the roar of blood in his ears drowning out everything else. Then, slowly, wonder eclipsed the shock. A child? His voice cracked on the word. Liana's patterns pulsed with joy. The first of both our kinds, human and Proxian, made possible through the dreaming. Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the storm itself could not tear her away. His chest ached with a fierce, protective joy that felt almost unbearable. For 15 years he had hidden from life, convinced he was finished. Now he was being asked to build a future not only for himself, Not only for a community, but for a child who would embody everything they were fighting for. When he finally found words, they were hoarse, choked with emotion. I never thought. Liana pressed a finger to his lips. Neither did I, but the dreaming did. That night, the announcement spread through the settlement. Humans and Proxians alike gathered in the courtyard, raising cups in a toast to new beginnings. For Jack, it was more than a celebration. It was proof that isolation had not been his destiny. That solitude had only been the waiting room for something larger. As the songs rose into the desert night, Jack lifted his gaze to the 3 moons. For the first time in 15 years, he was no longer thinking about the past he had fled. His eyes were fixed firmly on the future. The night of the festival ended with music lingering in the air, a mingling of human drums and Proxian chants echoing across the dunes. Jack sat with Liana in the courtyard long after most had drifted to sleep, her head resting against his shoulder. The firelight painted her markings in shifting patterns, warm and alive. He let himself believe, for a few quiet hours, that peace had finally taken root here. That dreaming had other plans. That night his sleep was heavy, but not restful. The vision came sharper than ever, Liana at his side, leading him through caverns deep beneath Proxima B7's crust. The walls glowed faintly with veins of crystal, pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. He heard whispers, voices layered on voices, too many to belong to any one mind. When he reached out, the crystal flared, and an ocean of consciousness poured into him, memories that were not his, stretching back farther than recorded history. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat, Liana's hand already gripping her blue eyes wide. You saw it too, she whispered. Not a question. Jack pushed himself upright, chest heaving. What the hell was that? Liana's patterns shifted rapidly, agitated. I did not want to tell you until I was certain. The dreaming. It is not only Proxian, not only ours. It is older, much older. Jack stared at her, uncomprehending. Older? You mean, she nodded, beneath us. This planet was not empty. When my people came, the caverns, the crystal network, they are not natural formations. They are a lattice, an architecture, something left behind. Jack swung his legs off the bed, pacing the room. You're telling me all these shared visions, these bonds forming between us, that's not biology. It's some kind of machine? Not a machine, Liana said softly. More than that. A consciousness woven into the crust of this world. It amplifies what already exists in us, the capacity to connect, to share, but it is guiding us too. The dreams are not random. They are a summons. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. He thought of the way the network had spread human Proxian pairs, forming dream bonds. Intelligence flowing faster than syndicate forces could counter. Entire battles won before they were fought. And now Liana was telling him it wasn't coincidence. Wasn't destiny, but something deliberate. Christ, he muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. We've been playing right into it. Liana rose and crossed to him, her hand finding his cheek. Her touch steadied him, with the truth in. Her eyes offered no comfort. Perhaps. Or perhaps we are fulfilling what was left unfinished. The next morning, Jack gathered the Council Commander Reed, General Terrace, Cora, Mora, and several human settlers. In the Cum's room, Liana projected the images she had pulled from the dreamscape. Vast caverns laced with glowing crystal, alien carvings etched into the walls, symbols older than Proxian civilization itself. The room fell silent. General Terrace broke it first. If this is true, then the dream network isn't just a tactical advantage. It's a weapon. A relic. Of whoever came before. Reed frowned, rubbing his jaw. Or a trap. Something left behind to bend minds toward a purpose we don't understand. Jack listened, his jaw tight. The soldier in him wanted to see only threat, only manipulation. But another part, the part that had lived 15 years in solitude, and now felt the bond of 200 lives woven into his, saw something else. It doesn't matter what it was meant to be, he said finally. What matters is what we make of it now. We've turned it into unity, into survival. That's our choice, not theirs. Liana's patterns glowed bright with pride, but the weight in her gaze told him she shared his unease. Because beneath his words lay the truth. No matter how they used it, something vast and ancient was listening. That night, as the settlement settled into uneasy sleep, Jack stood once more on the observation deck. The 3 moons hung heavy in the sky, there, light silvering the dunes. He felt Liana's hand slip into his, the warmth of her presence anchoring him against the chill that had crept into his bones. You don't regret opening the gate that day? She asked softly. Jack thought of the alarm blaring, of Liana's face on the monitor, of the moment he chose to abandon solitude. He squeezed her hand. How could I? Everything I have now, everything we've built, it started there. Liana leaned into him, her patterns glowing faintly. Then whatever lies beneath, whatever truth the dreaming holds, we face it together. Jack nodded, but his gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. Somewhere beneath their feet, an ancient intelligence stirred, watching through the lattice of crystal. It had guided them here, bound their minds, reshaped their futures. And for the first time in his life, Jack Harmon wondered if humanity had stumbled not into an alliance, but into the hands of something far greater, something that might yet decide the fate of 2 species. The wind rose, carrying sand against the walls of Harmony Ranch. Jack stood unmoving. The stubborn human who had once craved solitude now braced against a truth larger than war, larger than peace, for the first time. In 15 years, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. But he knew whatever came next tomorrow would never belong to him alone again.